All right. My deepest apologies. I had a complete computer plug. That's the technical term for it. So let's start as if none of that ever happened. I'm still Dave Lamont, and this is still the Almost Daily Dave. And I'm now hoping I can get through this story that I'm very anxious to share with you all a little bit more quickly without any technical problems. So I am very sorry about that. Everything just froze up. And so I realized I had to get going and scramble and redo everything as fast as I possibly could. So let me start over with mentioning that today is the 1-year anniversary of the sighting of a god in Nashville. And the story goes that I was there doing a football game between Vanderbilt and East Tennessee State. Not exactly one of your big games of the day, and not a good football game at all. Neither team played well. Vanderbilt slugged their way through to a rare win on a very rainy, blah day in a fun city. Nashville's pretty cool. I like it. But it was not a great day. Now, my broadcast partner that day was my dear friend Ray Bentley, whom you've seen on a nooner about a month or so ago. I had Phil DeMontmollen as my statistician. Phil is a dear friend, and so is Big Dave Lemon, who is my spotter. And this was Ray's birthday. We had some time after the game, and we're like, well, what are we going to do? Well, sometimes we make dinner reservations. In this case, I didn't. We really didn't know what. And we were driving distance from the honky-tonk area of Nashville that's really cool with all the bars and barbecue places and good places to eat and just listen to music. And I thought, well, that might be fun. But the weather was blah. It really was not a fun night to go cruising down there. Now, Broadway is, oddly enough, the name of the street. So if you've been to Nashville, you know what I'm talking about. And we happened to be staying at a really nice hotel. It was a Lowe's hotel, and I could see the campus out my window, along with an air conditioner for some reason. And we don't always get to stay in nice hotels. Sometimes in cities we do. But if you're in a college town, you take what you get. And in this case, we happen to be at a very nice place. So Reed, let's go meet downstairs in the hotel bar, and we'll kind of figure out what's going on from there. Okay, agreed. So I go down there. Ray is there. Our director, Dennis Lanius, who's a great dude, he was there. Big Dave shows up. Phil's there. So there's at least 5 of us. And we're trying to decide. And so we're having a pop while we're trying to decide what to do. And we said, Ray, listen, buddy, what do you want? And he's, I don't know. So eventually we decided, you know what? This is a nice place. They got food. I'm sure it's good. It's a nice hotel. Let's just make this the deal. Okay, fine. We're going to stay. That's cool. So I'm at one end of the bar, and I'm having whatever I'm having. I don't even remember. Doesn't matter. And I look across the bar, and I probably did one of these. Now, I have been around in my career people that are very well known. I've interviewed a lot of, particularly in the world of sports, obviously. Maybe the most famous person I've ever interviewed, you could argue, would be Magic Johnson. No political figures to speak of, or really entertainers, even radio stuff. I think Magic might have been would be my first choice. Well, you know what? I did interview Jimmy Carter a couple times. Former presidents ought to count for something. Anyway, I look across, and Dave is sitting here. Ray's in the middle of a conversation. Dave and I have known each other since college. That is going back a long time. And I lean over to him and I said, hey, look over there. I think that's Robert Plant. And he looks, he goes, I don't know. What do you think? I go, well, I think it is. Now, remember, he has had a very varied and interesting musical career since the breakup of Led Zeppelin. He's worked with a lot of different artists, including Alison Krauss, in making kind of a bluegrass record that won Grammy Awards. He's worked with a lot of different bands, different presentations. He has had a very interesting, in other words, he didn't stay stuck in the lane at all. So let me back up a little bit and talk to those of you who may not know why this is such a big deal. A little history lesson. before I go on. And I had promised I'm not going to try to ramble on, but I might. Robert Plant was the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. I think almost all of you know that. Led Zeppelin basically took over for the Beatles in popularity. Maybe not quite that popular, but Zeppelin was a monolith. They were a monster starting from the late 60s, and they just happened at a time as so the Beatles are breaking up and the Stones are inconsistent. The Who is pretty damn solid at this time, and Pink Floyd is emerging, but Zeppelin outdid them all. In my view anyway, and there's no right or wrong answer on that, but to me, for a time, there was no bigger rock band when there was no time that rock music was bigger. They were at the top. Unbelievably gifted musicians, every one of them. Arguably the greatest drummer of all time. Jimmy Page, one of the greatest guitar players, and I think the best rock producer of all time. John Paul Jones, ridiculously underrated multi-instrumentalist musician. And then, if that isn't good enough, you have a singer. My dog's about to go nuts here because someone just walked in the house, so hang with me. You have a singer that you'd never heard anything like this before, who I think is the greatest rock singer of all time, and that includes Freddie Mercury and whoever else you can think of. Not that Freddie was, he'd probably be second. Robert Plant had gears. And Robert Plant had gears like a great car, like a Rolls Royce or a Bentley or the fastest private jet you can think of, that he could gear from singing a raw blues song to this level that you cannot imagine. And in addition, he had the look. He had the hair, the shirt always open to reveal a hairy chest, and painted on jeans. Seriously. There's no human male that could have fit in those jeans in those days. They had to be painted on. So, I'm of that era. And everybody who's with me is of that era or appreciates who that man is. And he had a wonderful solo career. And he is right over there. But I'm going to make sure, because I'm Mr. Cool, I'm the one who spotted him. Now I need to be the one who confirms it. So this is kind of a sports bar setting, but a lot quieter. Not people, there's games all over the place, but no one's paying much attention. Neither are we now. So I, of course, do what everybody would do in that situation. I get up and walk over to where he is sitting. And he's in conversation with a woman who turns out to be one of the managers at this hotel, where obviously he is a guest. And I do the walk by, and I pretend to pay attention to a game on a screen that's behind him. And I do the walk by because, I am so cool. And I come back and I tell Dave, pardon my language, holy shit, it is him. Now, this is the most famous person I've ever been around. It ain't close. Oh, you know what? I was around Muhammad Ali, but I never interviewed him. That's a different level of fame, even than Robert Plant. So Ali would be number one. But come on, man. That voice, those jeans, that's him. Now, what do you do in that situation? Well, you'd be surprised to know that I am pretty shy about these things. All of a sudden, I'm not going to yell out, hey, it's Robert Plant, because that's not going to work. He's going to run back to his room or suite or whatever, and I don't want that. The guy is just quietly drinking a glass of red wine and talking to somebody. That's all he's doing. He's not trying to do anything. He's not working the room. He just wants to sit in there and not, he just wants to hang out like any normal person would want to hang out. So I called our bartender over and I said, look, we would like to buy him a drink. And the bartender knows who he is. He doesn't have to talk to us, but, we'd like to buy him whatever he's drinking in the next round we'd like to pay for. And he walks over and says that, and I see Plant shake his head like, no, you don't have to do that. And so the bartender said, no. He said, no, thanks. I said, okay. That's fine. So now I have to spread the news of this. So I and now I have to take a picture because I'm not going to walk over there and ask him for a picture. That's not my style. But at the same time, what do they say? If you don't have these days, especially with phones, if you don't have a photo, it didn't happen. So I could go around saying, hey, I saw Robert Plant here. And yeah, sure, buddy. So I took my phone and I sort of propped it up on the bar. And I'm like, okay. And that's why the photo looks like that. If you've seen the photo on Facebook, and there's one, then I blew it up and just him. Because the woman I cropped out of it was Lucinda Williams, a very talented musician in her own right. She showed up in the middle of all this, and they started to have another glass of wine just to talk. And they're quietly talking. I mean, the place isn't that loud. It's a medium-sized bar at best. And where our group is probably making more noise. In the meantime, I post on Facebook, here's a quiz, a celebrity sighting quiz. Here's some clues. You are not going to believe it. And I got some great guesses. People thought Mick Jagger. That would have also been godlike status. Elton John as well. And there's some really good guesses, but nobody guessed. Now, I have another buddy named Owen Murphy, who's a musician and a sports producer in Seattle. And I had just seen him earlier in the year. And I had said, hey, Murph. And so he guessed, and he guessed wrong. So I texted him the answer. I said, don't say anything. Here's the answer. He goes, holy crap. By the way, where are you? I'm at the Lowe's in Nashville. Murph writes back, so am I. I write back, get your butt down here now. Turns out that ESPN Radio that weekend was doing a Tennessee Titans game, and he was there to produce it. So he comes down, I buy him a beer, and he goes, God, that is him. I go, well, yeah, we figured that out. And he's still over there. So he goes, yeah. I said, who are you working with? Oh, so-and-so and Kelly Stauffer. Well, Kelly's a friend of mine. We text Kelly, hey, are you in Nashville? He says, I'll be here in 5 minutes. I said, come to the bar. So Kelly, just likes to have an occasional glass of red periodically, walks in, and we explained to him what was going on. Kelly is not the most culturally withered person. God bless him. He lives on a farm in a small town in Nebraska. But even he was impressed. So we now have this sighting on our plate. And now the great debate is, what are we going to do about it? And to go back to a Curb Your Enthusiasm reference, I slunked out. Or as Leon would say, I punked out. And I ultimately ate my dinner, finished my drinks, and I'm not going to lie to you, I did not go over there and shake his hand or bother him. I didn't. Others in our group did. I know at least 2 or 3 people went over and said hello. And he was polite, might have been mildly irritated, but hey, you're Robert freaking Plant. So that's going to happen, pal. And that's how the evening went. And I walked out of there buzzed, not because of the alcohol, but because of who he is, who he was, and who he will always be. So that's my part of the story. And I wish I had some spectacular ending for you, like, I show up at the airport the next day and he's in first class while I'm walking to my coach seat, but that's not the case. However, there is an interesting twist. Sunday, the day of the NFL game, Murph, Owen, the NFL producer, gets in the elevator and guess who's there? And he says hi, shakes his hand and talks to him. And it's like, son of a crap. And our director, Dennis, saw him also and shook his hand. He didn't do it that night. We were all kind of restrained, except for Big Dave, who did walk up to him and say, thanks for the music. So that's the Robert Plant story. And that is, other than Ali, the most famous person I have been in the room with. Jimmy Carter interview was on radio. I was in a room once as a reporter with Richard Nixon after he had been president, obviously. So that's pretty big too. But as far as entertainment goes, you ain't touching this one. I mean, seriously, at this point, it would have to be McCartney or Jagger that would even come close among rock stars in history. So there you go. Unplanned program today. Hope you enjoyed it. I didn't have a big ending for you, but I never said there was one. But it was an unbelievable occurrence and just a coincidence beyond. I mean, we could have gone out to some honky tonk down on Broadway and missed the whole thing. And I wouldn't have traded that night for anything. Just to be around my friends when this was happening, to be able to share it with them and to share it with you guys on Facebook as well was a lot of fun. And got a lot of wrong guesses. Nobody guessed it right. Nobody. Which surprised me. And I didn't put the picture up right away. I put the picture up after all the guesses. But it was just one of the most memorable nights of my life, and it just happened by accident. Sometimes good things happen by accident. All one guy had to do was say, hey, there's some place near here. Let's go, or let's go get some Nashville hot chicken at Hattie Mae's or something like that, and we would have been out the door and not thought twice about it. But we had the rain, and everybody had to get up kind of early to catch flights, so we decided to hang out. And it was the best hangout maybe of all time. So there you go. That's the Robert Plant story, the story behind that photo that you can see today on Facebook. I'm a bit lazy in putting some stuff up on YouTube, but my yesterday's Nooner, and I think I owe you 2 Nooners on the Facebook page, for the YouTube page, for those who rewatch them or have seen them for the first time over there. And I'll certainly put this up as well. So if you're just jumping in at the end and you want to hear what's going on about Robert Plant, that is available that way too. And follow me on Twitter as well, if you would. Now I'm going to take tomorrow and Thanksgiving and probably Friday off too. I think I'm going to play golf and enjoy the rest of the Thanksgiving holiday. And I hope you do too. Thank you again, and I'll see you